The Inside the Rails podcast is supported by Great British Racing and In the Paddock. InThePaddock.co.uk is a great place to start your shared ownership journey. Find racing clubs and syndicates with horses trained locally to you and at a cost that fits your budget using the search tools on the website. Within the Paddock, your ownership journey could start sooner than you think.
Hello, my name is Simon Double and welcome to Inside the Rails, a monthly podcast for horse racing enthusiasts everywhere. And as ever, I'm joined by my co-host, Phil Boyle from BG Racing. Hi Phil, how are you? And importantly, how is the voice?
Hi Simon. Yeah, I always say all good thanks at this point, and I actually mean it for a change. After 2 months of a cold-induced croaky voice for recording, listeners will get to hear my normal tones for a change. So, sorry about that, everyone.
Look, I must admit, if we'd been recording this a week ago, I'd have struggled, as I had the mother of all sore throats. My throat thought it had been attacked by a peaky blinder. Fortunately, all good now, although as Cheltenham approaches, gosh, we seem to be back in the throes of winter. I don't know about you, Phil, but I think we could all do with a bit of apricity in our lives. Anyway, on to today's podcast, which, believe it or not, is episode 40. Yes, episode 40. Who'd have thought it? I'm delighted to say we have Matt Colemen from Stroud Coleman Bloodstock on as our special guest.
Sounds good. And I'm going to have to head off and look up the word apricity now. So I'm sure our listeners will be doing the same thing now. I can't believe we've got to 40 episodes. And thinking back across those, I can't really remember a bloodstock agent on our list of previous guests. So we've definitely had plenty of people who've been involved in the sales process from other angles in the past. But it'll be interesting to find out a bit more about Matt's specific role.
So come on, Phil. Tell us about your BG Racing syndicate runners during the last month. Have you been a busy racing manager?
On and off. Stryder's not run again yet. He was sore after his last run and he's had a couple of other minor niggles, but hopefully he'll be back racing soon. Bella Cavallo has had a run though. She made her debut over hurdles at Ludlow. She was only 10th and beaten just over 60 lengths, which on paper some people would probably think is a bit of a disaster, but that race was run on really heavy ground, which always exaggerates the distances between the horses at the end of the race, and she just wasn't comfortable with those slippery conditions at all. She jumped okay though, and again she showed a great attitude. Indeed, far from being disappointed, we actually thought it was quite an encouraging run. As you all know, Simon, the first 3 runs for a horse are needed to give the official handicapper a chance to evaluate each horse and give it an appropriate handicap mark. And Bella was probably running here against horses that will end up being very good. So her finishing position was no disgrace, and we fully expect her to be really competitive once she gets a couple more runs under her belt and she can run against rivals of similar ability.
I'm sure you're right, Phil. Bella Cavallo will be happier when handicapping. And yes, I thought she showed ability and, as you say, a willing attitude early on. But what about Stryder? I understand he has new trainers. And I'm not talking about being moved to a new stables.
Yes, indeed. His current trainer will be happy about that. But yeah, we've got him a brand new set of Nikes to wear during training and racing. Yeah, it's actually quite an interesting one. I had my attention drawn to a new technology advancement in horseshoes by one of my shareholders. I spent quite a bit of time looking into it this month. The company making them is a company called Equishocks, and you'll probably remember Robert Thornton, the former jump jockey. He's involved in that business. They're making a vulcanized rubber shoe which has an aluminium insert inside it, as opposed to a traditional aluminium shoe. The intention is they behave the same way as a regular shoe, but their testing suggests that they reduce the concussion in the horse's foot and legs compared to a traditional shoe. Obviously, if you're banging aluminium onto a hard surface, that sends a shock up the horse's leg, and this is supposed to reduce that.
Sure.
A vet I know, Paolo Grasco, is also involved in the business, and I spoke to him and he confirmed that they do indeed aim to help with the impact through the leg, which is probably what's caused Stryder to be sore recently. So whilst they're a little bit more expensive than regular shoes, if they improve welfare and help Stryder to stay healthy, then I thought they're well worth a try. Very early days yet, but we'll see.
Look, I think this is yet another example of how we all care about our horses and give them the best possible care and attention to detail. So well done you. Is there any truth, though, in the rumour that Stryder has now been nicknamed Jimmy Choo?
I don't think we better give him any ideas. We want him back racing, not strutting his stuff on a catwalk. But yeah, we'll stay away from the Jimmy Choo nickname for a while. Now then, what about Solario Racing? Are you still on track to get that early 2-year-old runner this season?
Well, I don't want to say too much, but quietly, yes. I'm very pleased with the Mahatha colt. He's doing fast work now, has been on the grass quite a bit, and he's doing everything asked of him and well within himself. He gets named very early April.
Jolly good. That sounds like that would be fun. And what about the others? Are they all coming along okay?
Yes, I went up to Newmarket during the first week of February and saw all 4 Solario Racing horses. They'd all returned from their holidays and were all at different stages of training. So Sharp Distinction was trotting, but is now back cantering. The Massar 2-year-old colt was being lunged, having only just come back to the yard. He looked fantastic, and he's subsequently been trotting. And Baron Barolo was also trotting when I saw him, but he's now cantering. So, yes, all in good order.
And for the benefit of the listeners, might want to tell them what lunging means?
Yes, so this is when you're breaking in horses or you're bringing them back after a holiday or an injury. It's basically somebody standing in a little pen and you've got the horse going around in circles on a rope attached to the bridle, basically. So they're going around in circles, either at walk, trot or canter.
Jolly good. And any shareholder events planned coming up?
Yes, I was at Newmarket with a new owner recently. I showed some new people around the stables the day after. And on the 9th of March, I'm hosting a Solario Racing Open Day at Southgate Stables. Before that, I'm off to Huntingdon Races on the 3rd of March. Yes, Simon Double Solario Racing, going jumping. Haven't got a runner, but hosting some hospitality of owners. I really like Huntingdon. And further afield, the Eurostar is booked for October for the Arc de Triomphe. I'm organising another weekend trip to Paris this year from the 4th to the 7th of October. And in fact, I went to Paris a couple of weeks back to try out a new restaurant and finalise hotels. So if anybody fancies a trip to the Arc in October, there are some places left. Do get in touch.
Jolly good.
Now, talking of racing events, the RSA is arranging a shareholder event to visit Weatherby's, and members from various syndicates can go along and see behind the scenes of racing's administrators. So Weatherby's, they run the entries and declarations and do a lot of work behind the scenes for racing. Also, Jockey Club racecourses are organising some syndicate showcase events as well. Are you going to any of these, Phil?
Yeah, I've got a few shareholders interested in the Weatherby's event. I think it'll be good to see behind the scenes there. So I will probably take them along to that. And I'll probably have a trade stand at the Wincanton and Warwick Syndicate Showcase Days in March and April. They're both close enough to where my horses are trained that I might get some interest there. I'm not sure about the others yet. Some of them are likely to be too far away from where my horses are trained to attract much interest. So, yeah, even though I need to tick off Carlisle as a course to visit, it's doubtful that I'll go to the Syndicate Day there.
Well, actually, I have been to Carlisle, but like you, I shan't be going on this occasion. As listeners know, our podcasts get released on the 1st of each month, so this one will be going out less than a fortnight before the Cheltenham Festival. Gosh, that's come around quickly. Silly question this, but I take it you're going, Phil?
Yep, I certainly am. Already plans in place for making our way down to the Cotswolds for the week. And indeed, during racing, I'll be in my usual spot for all 4 days. Really looking forward to it.
Where is your usual spot? Remind listeners.
I stand on the members viewing steps. So there's an area of the viewing steps that's reserved for owners and trainers, and I stand a little bit along from there. There's a disabled platform built into the grandstand, and we stand just behind there because it tends to not get as busy. Obviously, when people start piling up into the stands for the race, they quickly block all the stairwells, which usually means we have a little bit more room than most during the Cheltenham Festival, which is nice.
Okay, it sounds like you got it really well planned. Well done. I shan't be joining you, but as ever, I will be glued to ITV. And there are a few horses and races I'm looking forward to in particular. My oldest anti-post bet is on Gallic Warrior in the Turner's Chase, and he's still one of the market leaders, although disappointed last time out. Amy Murphy, my trainer, won a listed race recently with Carroll's Pass at Exeter. The 6-year-old mare by Authorised is a lively outsider at 16 and 20-1 in the Mare's Chase on the Friday. She loves heavy going, so keep an eye on her and the going. Other horses I'm looking forward to include David Pipe's Thanks for the Help, last year's beaten favourite in the Potemps Handicap Hurdle. What about you, Phil?
I won't be cheering on Amy's horse if it likes heavy going, because if it's heavy going on the Friday, that'll mean it's been raining all week, and I probably won't be enjoying the Cheltenham Festival quite as much. So selfishly, I might prefer that it's not heavy ground on Friday. But after Willie Mullins dominated the Dublin Racing Festival, I suspect it could be more of the same at Cheltenham. But I hope there's some good stories and some great races. There usually are. I suspect that if Constitution Hill wins the Champion Hurdle, then it won't be a great race because it might well be a bit of a procession. But even if it is, I'll be grateful to get the chance to, watch him strut his stuff live. That's always a bit special. I thought the surprise front-running tactics on Edwardstone might have contributed to his impressive win last month, and he's added another dimension to the Champion Chase, which is already quite a fascinating race. So looking forward to seeing that. Shishkin also looked pretty good this month. It'll be good to see how he measures up against the best of the Irish, and I'm sure I'll be picking out some dark horses in the handicaps the night before racing each day.
Yes, you mentioned the Champion Chase. I always think that's one of the highlights of the meeting, year in, year out. It's a fascinating race. Yeah, look, let's hope it's not yet another Willie Mullins benefit. I mean, he's a fantastic trainer, and obviously if you back his horses, you probably do quite well at Cheltenham. But it would be nice to see some of the smaller guns doing well. And let's hope some syndicate runners can cause a bit of a splash.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that shouldn't be overlooked. Of course, being involved in shared ownership can open up the dream of getting to Cheltenham and maybe even having a winner there to so many more people than could do it if they had to buy the horse all on their own. So, yeah, I also hope there's some syndicate success stories that we can talk about next month.
Absolutely. Now, affordability checks, still the big topic at present, and let's hope the debate in Parliament, which I think happens today while we're recording, let's hope that debate leads to a major softening in some of the, what I think are draconian measures which some want introduced into controlling how we spend our money.
Indeed, yes. By the time this is released in a few days' time, that debate will be behind us, and it'll be interesting to see whether that's had any impact and how the affordability checks issue progresses. It's really an area that could have a massive impact on our sport. So fingers firmly crossed for a positive outcome.
As you say, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Well, I'm delighted to say we have our special guest, Matt Coleman, on the line. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi, guys. Thanks for inviting me. Great to speak to you.
Well, it's kind of you to give up your time, especially as I gather you've just returned from holiday. Did you have a good time? Where did you go?
Yeah, we had a great time, thank you. We had 10 days in the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean, which is very nice. So it's great to see some sunshine and a bit of hot weather, because obviously the weather here has been pretty wet and miserable, hasn't it? So it's a rare spare week I have in the sales calendar.
Well, I'm sure it was a deserved break. Dominican Republic, would you recommend it?
I would, yeah, it's fantastic. Well, the two things I wanted were a direct flight with the kids and plenty of good weather. So it ticked both boxes, and we stayed in a lovely resort that had loads of different swimming pools and water slides and lots of restaurants and a lovely beach. And there was lots to do, and plenty of entertainment for the kids and everything like that. So
Stop there. You're making me very envious. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose there's lots of people thinking, shut up and talk about horses.
No. Listen, thank you again for coming on. You're the first bloodstock agent we've had on Inside the Rails. For those who aren't so familiar with different jobs in racing, what basically is a bloodstock agent?
Bloodstock agent is effectively an agent who helps a client mostly buy a horse. So that, for me, I'm one of the few agents that does flat and jumps and breeding. So I do everything from buying foals, buying yearlings, buying jump horses, Irish pointer pointers, buy brood mares, the occasional stallion. So I do a bit of everything. And lots of agents would tend to specialize in a particular area, but I'm, you might say, sort of jack of all trades, master of none. But I have a keen interest in flat and jumps and the breeding industry. So I'm lucky I've got clients in all sectors, and yeah, it means quite a demanding sales schedule in the heat of the sales season, but I'm fortunate that I have some good clients in all sections.
Okay, so you have many, many hats. Can we actually go back to the beginning? Do you have a horsey background? How did you get into the horse racing industry? What's the Matt Coleman story?
Not particularly horsey. I got the racing bug through going racing with my dad. My dad, it was and still very much is, a real keen racing fan. He lives down in the southeast, and he'd go racing himself 3 or 4 times a week to all the London tracks. But I was actually born in Australia, in Melbourne, and Dad used to take me racing at Flemington when I was very small, sort of still in a pram. So I've been going racing from a very, very young age. Dad actually worked in the oil industry, but horse racing was his sort of hobby, as it were, but only from a sort of betting, really race goer and betting perspective. So I first got the bug just going racing and just loved going. When I wasn't playing sport at school, on a Saturday, I always used to go racing with Dad. And I just caught the bug. I did sort of the standard education, went to school and then went to university. And at the end of university, I sort of had the choice to go sort of one direction into the city or the other direction into horse racing. So I decided to take the probably less usual route of going into horse racing. I wasn't particularly horsey, which sounds stupid, but I had a good knowledge of form and pedigrees, and I could ride a bit, but bar that, I wasn't horsey. So I did a course which is now called the BHA Graduate Scheme, which is for graduates from university, based at the British Racing School in Newmarket. And I did that for 2 weeks, and then did a placement at Racetech, which is the company that does all the filming in horse racing. And so I did a placement there, and I was fortunate at the end of that course that what was the British Horse Racing Board in those days is now the British Horse Racing Association, the BHA. They asked me to come on as a sort of executive assistant when Peter Saville was in charge. So my first job was sort of working as an assistant to all the executive at the BHB in those days, and that was in the heat of the battle between Peter Saville and the bookmakers. So I did a lot of work for the executive in the background, with all the negotiations between the BHB and the betting industry. And then I sort of developed into various other roles at the BHB. I was quite involved with lots of the race administration with Weatherby's. I actually helped set up the first website that did entries and declarations.
Oh, right.
So I was involved with that, and a variety of jobs across the BHB. But my job there after 4 years was becoming sort of very administrational rather than in the core of the industry. So I took the chance of applying for what is now the Godolphin Flying Start Scholarship Scheme, which was the second course of it. I can't remember how many years it's been going, but 20 years I think it's up to now. So I applied for that and got on it, and had a fantastic 2 years working on all the Darley farms and working for vets and trainers and all sorts of different people in the industry all around the world, in England, Ireland, America, Australia, and Dubai. So that really catapulted me into sort of the core of the industry and taught me a lot about the equine side that I didn't really have the knowledge in I needed. And then from the Darley, well, it was the Darley Flying Start, now the Godolphin Flying Start, John Ferguson, who was sort of bloodstock advisor to Sheikh Mohammed in those days, suggested that I might go and work with Anthony Stroud, who was a leading bloodstock agent, still is, and was buying lots of Sheikh Mohammed's horses. So Anthony was very kind to give me a job. And I worked as Anthony's assistant just to start off with, did the sales with him. We did a sales season together and got on quite well. And then I sort of gradually worked up from there. And that was in 2006. And now we're still together, and we're now business partners and still working together almost 18 years later now. So, started off doing that. And I've just gradually, like any agent, you just need to have clients that are going to let you buy horses. So I started off as just Anthony's assistant and just gradually worked my way up, getting any sort of order from an owner or trainer I could. And, like everything in life, if you have a bit of luck and buy a few good horses, other people come on board, and people started to call me up asking for my help with buying various types of horses. And it's just gone forward from there. So I've been fortunate. It doesn't really feel like a job to me. I would watch racing a lot, even if I wasn't working in it. So I'm fortunate to have a job in the industry I found extremely interesting.
You mentioned Anthony Stroud, and you work with Anthony at Stroud Coleman Bloodstock, based in Newmarket. Anthony Stroud's been a very well-known bloodstock agent for many years. How do you divide up the work between you? Do you have your own client base, for example?
I do, yes. Anthony, he's heavily involved with the Godolphin operation, does, the buying of all their yearlings and foals, and, he's a key part of that operation. We do have our separate clients, really, but there's a fair amount of crossover. Certainly at the major yearling sales, there's obviously so many horses, and the broodmare sales, there's so many horses that, one person can't do it on their own. So we would team up in terms of looking at horses. Everyone has different ideas, so we tend to sort of approach the catalogue individually, and then, I might come up with an idea he hadn't thought of, and vice versa. So it's always good. Two heads are always better than one. We do effectively have our own clients, but it's very much a team effort. It's, we work as a team. It's not sort of him and I. It's all a team effort. And there's obviously certain people he deals with and certain people I deal with, but the majority of them would have some sort of contact with both of us. Anthony doesn't really do jump racing, so the jump racing stuff I would tend to do on my own, but certainly all the flat racing stuff, most of our clients would have some sort of contact with both Anthony and I. So, it's very much a team effort.
Couple of questions from me, Matt, if I may. I don't want you to give away trade secrets. I don't want you to be depriving yourself of future commissions by teaching everybody to do what you've spent years trying to learn. But if you are looking at a horse, let's say a yearling, are there any particular things you always look for, or anything that you get put off by when you're buying a horse?
Oh, it's a multifactorial job, I would say. I mean, if anyone, and I always welcome any young people who want to make their way in the industry, if anyone comes around the sale with me, it's actually quite hard to explain what you see in a horse sometimes. You look at so many horses every year that I have a sort of innate impression that a horse will sort of strike me and I'll go, wow, he's cool, he or she is cool. But generally, the basic assets I'm looking for is a good walking horse. At the end of the day, whether it's a flat horse, a jumps horse, any type of horse, you want an athlete. So you want a horse that moves well, that has some athleticism. Attitude is obviously quite important. When you're looking at a yearling or a foal, attitude is not always easy to assess. But for example, if I like a horse at the stables, when I look at it, I'll always go and see it in the parade ring before it goes into the auction ring, because sometimes they might behave well down at the stable, but when they come up and see all the people, their brain can react very differently. So I try and get as many clues as I can. I'll obviously try and look at the horse once or twice or sometimes 3 times at the stable and then assess them in the parade ring. Conformationally, I would look for different things in different horses. So a 3-mile chaser that's going to run in soft ground is obviously a very different model to a 5-furlong 2-year-old that's trying to win a 2-year-old race at Royal Ascot. So there's certain conformation traits. I mean, to give you an example, slack pasterns, which the pastern is from the hoof to the horse's ankle or fetlock joint. If those are very slack and close to the ground, that seems to be fine in jumps horses, probably because they're running in soft ground. But if you see a flat horse with very slack pasterns, that's generally not a good thing, because most of the flat horses are running on fast ground, and slack pastern is probably going to cause them probably putting a lot of stress on their fetlock joints. So there's a number of things like that I would assess. And in terms of correctness, so when the horse walks towards you, if I was buying a horse to resell, for example, a foal to resell as a yearling, or a yearling to resell as a breeze-up horse, for example, I think with conformation, if you're trying to resell to the market, you want to be quite strict on conformation. Buying a horse to race, I'd be much more forgiving of its front legs. I've seen a number of very crooked horses win a lot of big races. And so I'm somewhat forgiving. Obviously, when I'm buying for a trainer or an owner, if the trainer and owner is at the sale, I would, show them the horse and say, look, I think this horse will be okay. And obviously you have the assistance of vets in terms of x-raying and scanning, so you can see if there's any problems that you can't see with your naked eye. But if there is a conformation fault, the one thing I don't like is, say a horse toes in or is very offset of its knees. If on x-ray that is where the problem is, then that would sort of make me shy away. If the conformation defect is causing a horse a problem, then that's when I sort of would steer away. But I tend just to look for generally the shape of the horse, how it walks, and its attitude. They'd be the three main things. And then there's a myriad of other facets I'd look for in terms of the horse's back end, the shape of its hind leg, how it walks, its front leg conformation, just its general shape and strength, and how much depth it has through its shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a huge list of facets I'd look for.
Sure. That's really interesting. Thanks for that. And as you know, Simon and I put together Inside the Rails to try and promote shared ownership, specifically sort of syndicates, racing clubs. What do you think of syndicates in the future, their place in the future of the industry?
The syndicates are, I think, essential, even more so now with the rising costs of training and buying horses versus our prize money situation. I think that syndicates and shared ownership are more and more the way to go. I mean, unless you've got these wealthy sheikhs or wealthy businessmen that can afford their own horse, more and more of the trainers I work for are in sourcing shared ownership on individual horses. Actually, a very good friend of mine, Sam Hoskins, runs Hot to Trot and Kennet Valley. I'm sure you know him.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So I've sort of seen Sam work those two companies forward and been very successful doing so. And I think any syndicate that can get someone to dip their toe into the water in racehorse ownership is a great way of getting people involved. And even a lot of the big owners have all started in a syndicate, have got a taste for it, and then because they've got the financial wherewithal to do so, they've then managed to get their own horse. But more and more the trainers I buy for, they would buy a horse at the sale and then take the horse home and then split the horse up into shares, because I think financially that's just a much more affordable way for owners to do it nowadays. It would be very different if the prize money was a lot stronger, but at the moment it's not. So I think shared ownership and syndicates are the way to go, certainly for the small to medium-sized trainer who probably doesn't have a raft of wealthy owners. I think shared ownership is sort of essential nowadays.
Look, really enjoyed having you on Inside the Rails. Thank you so much. Finally, a question we like to ask all of our guests. If you could change three things in British racing for the good of British racing, what would they be?
The obvious thing is prize money. If you see any racing jurisdiction, Australia, America, Dubai, Saudi Arabia recently, Qatar, compared to us, it just makes such a difference when the prize money is good. Now, we're obviously never going to get to the levels of these Middle Eastern races, but I think day to day, I'm sure you guys find it in syndication as well, but for trainers, the English model is just an increasingly difficult sell to an owner. The cost of what a racehorse costs nowadays, the cost of training them versus the prize money is just such a turn-off. And I am really sensing it, flat racing and particularly jump racing, that the small to medium-sized trainers are finding it increasingly difficult to find owners. And I think if prize money was improved, it would make an enormous difference. And I know, the cost of living crisis, a racehorse is probably the first thing that people steer away from if they, when they're feeling the pinch a little bit. But if prize money was stronger, And there are certain race courses doing a fantastic job in that regard, but I think overall, if there was more prize money, it'd make a big difference. The French premium system is a phenomenal system. Obviously, they've got a tote-only based betting industry, which facilitates that premium industry, but some kind of premiums in that regard would be a huge help. The likes of the Great British Bonus, has been a big help. Trying to buy fillies that can go on to win that prize. Any sort of bonuses like that are really good. But generally, if we can increase the prize money, it would be a big help. Attached to that is the fact that there is far, far, far too much racing. If there were fewer fixtures, obviously the pot of money is going to be spread less thinly across the number of races we have. So if there were fewer fixtures, it would, one, make racing more attractive from a hunting perspective, because there's just so much racing, it's impossible to keep tabs on it all at the moment. And also it would target this field size problem that we have, where there's too many races with not enough runners. And I do think when there's, as John Frankham says, when there's always biscuits in the tin, where's the fun in biscuits? And I do think, because there's just so much racing, it does, for the sort of casual racing fan, it just becomes too much to follow. And I think if there was less racing, it would really help from both a financial and an interest perspective. I'm not an expert in racing politics, but the feeling I get is that the race courses and the bookmakers are effectively controlling the fixture list. The BHA have obviously a say, but the race courses and the bookmakers are controlling the fixture list. And it's a little bit that the tail's wagging the dog. So, but if there's some way that the BHA can run fewer fixtures, I think it would just help. It would help the participants. It would help the interest levels, and it would help the prize money. I know that the bookmaking industry and the race courses who get paid per race by the bookmaking industry want as a lot of racing, but I really think it would be for the benefit of everyone to have fewer fixtures. I don't know whether some kind of structure could be formed where the BHA don't fund fixtures they don't want, as in they would fund the stewarding, etc., but they wouldn't actually give any levy prize money to fixtures they don't want. And if the bookmakers and racecourses want to run their own fixtures with no levy, then so be it. But that some kind of strategy like that might then allow the levy to be concentrated on fewer fixtures and therefore run those fixtures for more prize money. Probably more prize money, less racing. And another bugbear I have is just the cost, entrance costs onto race courses. In this cost of living crisis, I cannot really fathom why race courses want to charge so much money, especially for the smaller fixtures. I can somewhat understand charging big ticket prices for big meetings, but day to day, I think it's very sad when there's racing fixtures being run with 50, 100, 200 people there who don't, if racing was free to get in or was being, just a few pounds to get in, like it is in France, I would hope that you get a much bigger attendance, and then the race courses would make their money out of the food, drink, and betting. But I think it doesn't do anyone any good to have run endless fixtures with very small attendances. And if we could make racing much cheaper to attend, I would think that would be of some assistance. And I read that at the top end, I read the Cheltenham Festival is a long way down on ticket sales. There's probably a number of factors why that's happening, but I would think just the cost of attending is one of the major factors, that people just aren't prepared to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds to go racing. So I think turning people off with entrance costs doesn't really make any sense to me, because if you got people through the gates, they're going to spend money on food, drink, betting. So there's other ways of making money out of them. I just don't understand when you go racing to an all-weather meeting midweek and it's £30 or £40 to get in. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Matt, it's been absolutely fascinating having you on. We could talk for hours, but I appreciate you've only just come back off holiday and you've still probably got quite a few decks to clear in terms of your office and your business. But it's been really fascinating, and wish you. I'm sure we're going to bump into each other during the course of the season, but wish you every success in all aspects of the industry. Thank you.
Great. No, thanks for having me on, guys, and I look forward to seeing you around the races and the sales again soon.
Well, another great guest, Phil, wasn't he? Quite often, bloodstock agents, I always think they're a little bit reluctant to give much away, but I learned certainly quite a few things here about confirmation of horses. It was really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it certainly was. Yeah, really enjoyed that. It was as you say, fascinating interview. Before we sign off, I ought to encourage our listeners to get involved in shared ownership. Simon and I are always happy to chat to anybody that's thinking about getting involved, especially if you'd like to take a share in one of our horses. But if not, there are plenty of different options out there. Great British Racing sponsor the podcast now. You'll hear their advert at the start and finish of each episode, and there in the Paddock website is a great resource to find a syndicate or racing club that will provide you with something at the right price and in the right location. Please, could you also support us by following us to get new episodes on your chosen podcast platform? And please also tell people about us. It's the best way for us to grow.
Well, that just leaves me to thank our sponsors, Great British Racing, co-host Phil Boyle from BG Racing, our very special guest, bloodstock agent Matt Coleman, producer Callum Ronan from Callum Ronan Creative, and of course, you, the listeners. One can almost hear the Cheltenham roar as the tapes go up for the start of the 4-day extravaganza on March the 12th. Will it be yet again another Willie Mullins benefit bonanza? Or will syndicates prove that it really is possible for David to take on Goliath? This is Simon Double from Solario Racing saying, thank you for listening to Inside the Rails, and until next time, goodbye.
The Inside the Rails podcast is supported by Great British Racing and In the Paddock. InThePaddock.co.uk is a great place to start your shared ownership journey. Find racing clubs and syndicates with horses trained locally to you and at a cost that fits your budget using the search tools on the website. Within the Paddock, your ownership journey could start sooner than you think.